In the last part of our lecture, we used gparted to create a couple of partitions. We're going to recreate those exact same partitions, but this time we'll be using Fdisk. So our goal is to take dev SDB, the second hard drive in the system, and create a primary partition, and then an extended partition, and then a couple of logical drives inside of that extension. All right, so the Fdisk Utility, if you've never used it, is very similar to the Windows Fdisk Utility, just a lot more powerful than the Windows version. Has a lot more options for you. If I just type fdisk-l and press enter, I get a printout pretty much of everything that the system sees. Now you can see there's a lot of little look like error messages being thrown up here about dev/dm-2 doesn't have a valid partition table. That's because those are LVM partitions, and Fdisk, being an older utility for partitioning, doesn't really understand how to handle those partition types. So don't worry about that when we talk about LVM. We'll get into that. Now, if I scroll all the way up to the top, this is what I'm interested in. First thing we see is dev SDA. That is our main drive. And we can see it's broken into two partitions, SDA1 and SDA2, which holds the Linux LVM information. SDB has no partition table on it right now. And what we're going to do is use Fdisk to actually create it. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll quit out of here. And what I can do is type fdisk and then pull out the full path, so SDB, and press enter. Now remember, SDB means the whole drive. When you use Fdisk, you specify the whole drive, not a partition on the drive. So SDB, I press enter, and it comes up and gives me information about partition tables not valid. Once again, that's okay. If I press M here right now, and that's the part I'm interested in where it says command. M is for help, and it basically shows me all the different options I have, and we'll use quite a few of them in here. I can use D for deleting a partition. I can list known partition types. This is important because you have lots of different types that we can have in Linux. I can add a partition. I can print the partition table, basically view what I've already done. I can quit without saving. Let's see, we can look at the partition system's ID. This is basically saying what file system will be put onto this partition, so that's really important. And then I can also, and this is a big one, write it out, because if you don't write it out at the end, you don't get anything on the disk, it just quits off. So let's go ahead and create a new one. So I will type new. And it's asking me, do I want to create a primary or an extension? Now notice, primary 1 to 4. Can only create 4 of those. Maximum 3 primaries and then 1 possible extension. So I will say I want a P for primary, and I want the first partition. And then it's asking me what cylinder. You take the first one by default. And then from there, I can use cylinders, which is difficult, or I can actually use sizes, which I will. So what I will say here is plus 100M. Basically what that means is I want to create a partition that's 100 megabytes in size. I can create kilobytes or gigabytes depending on what I use. So I'll press enter, and then I'm going to press P to print it, so you can see right here that it actually has created SDB1, and this is indicating that it's starting here and ending here. That's how many blocks it is, which equals about 100 megs, and the ID by default is Linux, meaning it's expecting an ext file system on it. Fantastic. Now we'll go back in again and say new again, because that's our primary. It says, what do you want to do? And I will select E for extension. Which partition type? I'll press 2 because it is the second partition. It'll ask me the first cylinder and then the default last cylinder. And now I'm going to take it all because I want to create, remember, we create that barrier around the partition, the unallocated partition, and now we're going to make logical drives inside of it. I'll press P, all right, and we can see right here, SDB2 is extended. Great. So what I'll do now is press new. And now look what happens. We have the option of creating a logical. So let's go ahead and try that. Press E for logical. I'm sorry, L for logical. And I'll take the first partition, and then once again, I'll just use plus 100. I will just say plus 50. Plus 50. I'll press new again. Same thing, L. I'll take the first one after that. Plus 150. Plus 50, I should say. Plus 50. M. And print it. And look what happens. We now have SDB1, SDB2, SDB5, and SDB6. And you may be saying to yourself, what happened to 3 and 4? The system never will allocate 3 and 4 because they may be used for primary partitions. If we did not create the extension, there could be a 3 and a 4, which would be the other 2 available partitions. So it leaves 3 and 4 off in case we want to create those extra primaries on this particular disk. So here we go. We have it. We have our partition. We can write it out now. I will do that. And until you do this, nothing has changed on this disk. Until you write it out, it's exactly the same. So if, for instance, if you, made a mistake, what you would do right now is press Q to quit and get out. But we're going to write it. And there you go. The system has created that for me. If I type fdisk-l and tell it to look at dev SDB, sure enough, there's the information that I have. Now I can go back in here and I'll up arrow, and this time I'll go back in. Once again, I specify the disk. And I want to delete something. You know what? I'm going to get rid of some of these things. And it says, which partition number do you want to delete? And this is where you have to remember what partitions you have on your system. So I'll say 2 and press enter, and then I'll press P to print. And you'll notice when I deleted 2, which was the extended, logicals went away also. Fantastic. And I'm going to press D again. And which one? It actually will just take the first one because it's the only one there. I'll write it out. And that's Fdisk, right? And what we can do with Fdisk. So Fdisk is a very common utility that you'll use quite a bit. Next, we'll look at part ed in our little series.